Hello, everybody. So, once again, I am back with another chapter of Perfect Sun instead of doing what I need to do today. So there's that. Also, I really hope my washing machine isn't too loud in the background. I know I usually have background noise because, I honestly don't know how to get rid of it. I'm pretty sure it's you need a soundproof or really quiet room, and I just do my recordings in the foyer of the house that I live in. So there's always some sort of background noise going on, but I think this time it might be a little louder than usual, and I really hope it's not too loud. Anyway, Perfect Sun by That One Guy with That One Ship. Read by Munchinon Mochiko. Chapter 6. Number 80C850. The time came for Sun to wake up. Lusamine demanded to be the only one present, and Feba, against his better judgment, had yielded to her authority. The president of the foundation disconnected him from all the machines and apparatuses exactly as she had been told to, slowly and carefully. After a moment, Sun stirred. He yawned and sat up straight, no longer tied down, no longer a prisoner, but also no longer himself. The moment he noticed Lusamine watching him, he froze, recognizing her somehow. He couldn't find the words. Sun. Sun breathed steadily, nervously glancing over her. For an instant, Lusamine was worried that something hadn't worked. Sun, it's me. He didn't respond. Sun, it's me, she repeated. Your mother. Slowly at first, a smile crept over his face. It grew and grew until Sun looked completely ecstatic. Let me look at you, Lusamine ordered, and Sun held still, maintaining his big smile as she tipped his head from side to side, cupping his chin. She took in every little aspect of his face, his piercing emerald eyes, his hair the exact same shade as her own, his brilliant white skin. Lusamine was enamored with the final result. Sun, her perfect little boy. Mother, Sun breathed. He shifted from side to side on the bed and put his arms around her. Lusamine returned to the gesture. Sun. She held herself back from crying at how beautiful it all was, how she finally felt like she had something worth having. It had been worth all the effort, all the blood, sweat, and tears. Most of it was Sun's, but the point still stood. It was worth it for the gaze he was giving her. Absolute, unflinching, endless dedication. Come on, Sun. Let's make you perfect. Lusamine had torn the pictures from the walls, eliminated every last remnants of her failure of a biological son's existence from paradise. While his name still hung around the typeful project, Gladian could be comfortably forgotten now, replaced with Sun. It was Sun's bedroom now, and with that came a new outlook on the place, a fresh start with a fresh face. All the furniture was new. Everything from Gladian's room had been piled into Lily's instead. Nothing but the best for Sun. His bed was just like hers, a black four-poster bed that extended to the ceiling with beige drapes. Everything else in the room was either black, white, or gold, the colors of a uniform beauty. A large mirror with a plain white frame hung in the corner of the room, and a large black wardrobe stood beside it. One wall was almost entirely covered by a window. The other three were plain white with a gold band in the center. What do you think? Lusamine asked. It looks great, Mother, Sun cried enthusiastically and went to jump onto his bed. Lusamine barely catching him by the waist before he landed on the surface. "Hold on," she said, amused and pleased by his reaction. "You're still wearing this filthy get-up." They hadn't changed Sun's clothes since he arrived, and the t-shirt and capris he had arrived in were positively disgusting after so long. Lusamine had been able to ignore it until now, but she had to see what he looked like once he was fully changed. "Oh," he said, as if just noticing. "Sorry, Mother. I was just so excited." Lusamine smiled and ruffled his hair. "Come on. Before you throw yourself around here, we should probably get you washed off." "Okay," he said, and took her offered hand immediately, beaming at her. "How did I—" He stopped, confused. "How did I get so messy?" He was looking down at himself with shock. "You were asleep for a while. I'll explain later." Lusamine dismissed the question, and Sun accepted the response. They were traveling down the corridor adjacent to his room, and stopped at the next door over. "This is the bedroom, shower room, whatever," Lusamine said, suddenly thinking about how nervous she was about this situation. "Okay," Sun peeped and went in ahead of her, already taking off his shirt and tossing it on the floor. "Sun, Lusamine hesitated, watching him strip off. "Sun, are you alright to do this by yourself?" If she was to see him naked, she wanted to save it for a special moment between the two of them. "Yes, Mother," Sun replied, as he pulled down his capris. Lusamine shut the door quickly, finding herself a little aroused, but enough to handle. She had hardly calmed herself before his voice called from inside. "How do I switch it on?" Lusamine made up her mind very fast. She opened the door again and marched to Sun's side. She avoided looking down at him. "Like this. You switch it off the same way," she said impatiently, still avoiding looking at him, knowing Sun's eyes were on her. "When you're done, put the towel on and come to your room, and we'll get you dressed up properly." She bolted back out the room and leaned against the door. She had to keep him pure. She knew doing what she had done to Lily and Gladian to him would be wrong, so she'd have to refrain from her habits. Now was a good time to learn, to teach herself again that she could improve for the sake of her beautiful and sweet third child. Returning to Sun's room, she drew the curtains and lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling. She had what she wanted. She had to be careful to not ruin it. Lying there, she knew she'd have to get Lily and Gladian back at some point. The president of the foundation had already picked out clothes for Sun to wear like she had for Lily and Gladian long ago. She knew Lily still wore the same dress that resembled her beloved Ultrabeast so closely, but that obsession with the creature seemed far away, pointless now. Sun was her new love. Gladian had shed his own trappings long ago. 2 out of 3 wasn't so bad. Peering into the wardrobe, she was satisfied with what she saw. 10 of the same pristine white shirt, fading into a deep gold around the ends of the sleeves and at the base. It looked just like her favorite trademark dress. If Lily was to resemble the mysterious Ultrabeast, Sun would resemble herself. This would be useful for 2 reasons. 1, it displayed his complete obedience to her and his new lineage as her perfect son. And 2, and it was directly linked to 1, when Lily and Gladian came back, they could see the example she and Sun would set together. And maybe that would convince them to change their rebellious ways. There was a 3rd reason, too. One that Lusamine put off thinking about. Sun would inevitably replace her as the president one day, and when he did so, she wanted him to keep up with the standards of perfection. The trousers she'd picked for him were similarly all identical, and bore the resemblance of her own leggings, white and black, the colors split at the seams. If he was as obsessed with her as she was with him, he'd love the look. Lusamine waited patiently for Sun's return. She laid out his clothes on the bed and made sure they were neatly folded, and began to think of a story to explain his situation and why he couldn't remember any of his early life with her. He was essentially a newborn with life skills, a full vocabulary, and unique quirks of his own she had yet to discover, already learned. He knew things, but he didn't know what, or who, or where he truly was. The easiest explanation, but in Lucian's opinion the silliest, was to tell him that he was made, not born. Made to be the perfect son. It wasn't far from the truth. The Foundation had made type null, so if she showed him the remaining 2 specimens, perhaps he'd believe he was a similar experiment. Or it would traumatize him. Probably traumatize him. The explanation that Lusamine was most against was him merely having amnesia or some such issue. She wanted him to feel like he was perfect, and telling him he'd forgotten how he got there felt wrong. Maybe he'd been separated from her as a child and she'd finally found him. That could be a cover if he did somehow begin to remember. Tell him the experiences were too traumatic for him to be allowed to recall them. She didn't want to pick a bad option, but all of them felt wrong somehow. As she mulled them over, the door opened and Son rushed in, his waist wrapped in a white towel as she requested. "Mother, I'm done." He was so endearing. She smiled as he ran to her side. "Arceus," she cursed internally, his gorgeous light skin gleaming, droplets of water clinging to it, shimmering in the soft golden glow from the ceiling. She had to... "Is that for me?" he asked, staring at the clothes lined up on the bed. He'd interrupted the dark impulses and desires. Lusamine was alone in her mind again. How had he quelled that conflict so fast? It had only began to stir. She had only just started to have the thoughts of including him in her carnal needs and tastes, but he'd put them to sleep, let them rest again. They'd be back, but nothing had defeated them so fast like his round eyes and inquisitive tone just had. He could control her. She'd done a good thing in taking him. She'd show him love, he'd return it, and keep her together. "Yes, son, why don't you go try it on?" "1 second," she said, and drew the drapes around the bed so Son could have the privacy as he changed. She didn't have any time to reflect on this strange effect on her. In no time at all, he emerged from behind the drapes, a little awkwardly, grinning. Lusamine barely got a glance of how he looked before he was on the move again. Damn it, he was energetic. "Let's look in the mirror." He rushed over to it, Lusamine by his side. "Mother," he said breathless, "I look just like you." He was right. He did. Emotion on a scale Lusamine hadn't felt in a long time welled inside her, and she put an arm around him. Leaning down to kiss his forehead, Son blushed. He reached up and put his arms around her neck, and she lifted him up in her arms and span him around, laughing along with him. She tossed Son down onto the bed playfully as he giggled uncontrollably. "Mother," he managed between gasps of air as she tickled him. "Stop it." Lusamine yielded to his request and lay beside him as he calmed down. She was laughing too, trying to cover it with her hand, trying to stifle her giggles of joy at finally having this feeling of power, of total control over him. After a moment, Son leaned over to her. "Son," she whispered. "Mother." Son came closer and kissed her on the cheek. He snuggled as close to her as possible. "I love you." "I love you too, my perfect boy." "We're perfect," Son mumbled into her shoulder. "You're right." Lusamine rolled onto her side, kicking off her heels and facing to Son, touching noses. He nuzzled her affectionately like a Pokemon, making her laugh. "You're so sweet." Son blushed again and kissed her as if to make up for it. The two lay side by side in bliss. It was twilight, and the lowless sea was sparkling with stars. Lily and Gladian were sitting on the coast by the Pokemon laboratory, Nebby and Type Null sleeping indoors. The waves called to the two of them, promising they'd be safe. All was calm. Lily rested against Gladian's shoulder. "Do you have a plan yet?" "No," Gladian admitted. "I don't."
"I've been looking everywhere for you two."
Gladian recognized the voice and whirled around. The silhouette approaching could only be one person. The hunched posture, the broad figure, the wild haircut. Guzma. "What do you want?" "I've come to take you two back to Miss Prez." Guzma scowled. "And I know how you love to do things the hard way, Gladian, so I brought me some backup. Some boys and some girls, some backup," he repeated, tossing the Pokeball into the air and catching it as he came closer. "Gladian," Lily said in a panic as the leader of Team Skull and the grunts came closer. "Gladian, what are we going to do?" Gladian scowled. He was not going back to paradise. He was not going to fall into his mother's shadow again. He was not going to hear the taunts, the constant reminders she would spit at him that Sun was dead and it was his fault for choosing to leave him. Gladian wasn't going back. He didn't care that Guzma was bigger than him. He didn't care about anything besides his freedom, his distance from Lusamine. He closed his trembling hands into fists. "Lily, go." If he got beat up, at least she'd make it away. One of them being free of their mother was better than neither. "Gladian," she said. He could tell from her tone that she was going to warn him against going up with Guzma. He didn't want to hear it. "Lily, listen to your sister, Gladian. Stop playing these dangerous games with the big boys and come quietly. And besides, from what I heard, Miss Prez has a nice surprise for you." Guzma stopped in front of Gladian, smirking down at him with a furrowed brow. Even when triumphant, the boss of Team Skull found a way to look enraged. Gladian thought about Nebby and Null. If they came quietly, they could leave Nebby and Null with Cookie and keep them away from Lusamine, sacrificing their future for the future of the world. If Lusamine didn't have Nebby as much as she may terrorize Lily and Gladian, she had no power over the rest of the world. Suddenly, Gladian lost his will to fight. Lusamine losing Nebby was far more important than his freedom. "Fine," Gladian hissed. "Fine." Guzma crossed his shoulder and smacked him on the back. "That's the spirit, kid. Come on, then." So that was chapter 6. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope for 1, my background was not that loud, and for 2, that Guzma's voice did not make you want to rip out your ears because of the accent. I really hope that it was at least decent. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed.